Okay, next up is we're going to look at this idle air control solenoid, control valve, whatever you want to call it. On these, it is mounted separately from the throttle body. Like on a domestic car and a lot of foreign cars, it's mounted to the throttle body up here someplace, but not on this one. It's a separate unit down here, and that is it right there. You notice it has a hose that comes off the intake pipe, and then it goes down to that right there, clamps on, and then it goes through there and comes back out, and that hose ends up coming in right up here, right there. So it's kind of an unusual arrangement, but that's just one of the ways that Volvo and German cars and things like that do these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and unclamp all this and remove that thing and see if I can clean it and see what's going on with it, make it start working again. What I'm afraid of is I'm going to find that it's full of oil. So because this engine's been pushing some oil up into the throttle body, which is not uncommon on a turbo, especially when they got a lot of miles on them. Man, that one is not in the best position, I don't think. In fact, what is that? I think I saw a drop of oil come off of something right there. What could that be? Well, don't know yet. I guess I'll have to look for that. But anyway, this thing, like I said, it's been dropping some oil in here, so I think that I will probably discover that to be the case. And so I think we're just going to need to probably loosen up. There's a nut right there on the top, and there's probably one matching. That little spacer down there looks kind of odd, doesn't it? Probably one matching, but that thing, you take the electric plug off first, and then we'll undo the two clamps on either side of this thing and see if we can weasel it out of there. So what were the symptoms of this acting up? Well, it didn't want to idle right at first. When you start the engine up, it would just rev up and go dead, rev up and go dead, and then if it stayed running, it would kind of idle up and idle down, idle up, idle down, until you tap the throttle, and that would kind of stabilize it. It was okay from there on. So, and these things have a couple of things that you need to deal with on this, and one of them is that what I just talked about, that IAC valve, and the next one is a TPS, which is back here, has to be adjusted correctly because it's got kind of a, I don't know that I can explain it very well, but it's got a setting on it that when you crack the throttle open, it makes a little click, and that tells the computer that you're off idle and that it needs to not depend on the IAC motor anymore for idle air. So that's kind of a real simplified explanation, but I'll as I get into this, if I can explain it better and show you things, I sure will. So I will see you in another video on this in a minute. Okay, then we're continuing along here with this work on the IAC and the throttle body. So I've got the IAC off. Where is it? Oh, here it is. And cleaned it up internally. Here it is. Just simply a servo motor, and where the air flows through. And you'll notice on this it has an arrow on it here, so when you put this back in, it can go, when you're looking at it from the top, it could go this way or it could go this way. So the airflow is going to come from the throttle inlet tube here, air inlet tube, whatever you're going to call it, through that hose, through the IAC, back up to the intake. So the arrow needs to be on the bottom, because you think about it, the airflow, the way this thing is mounted there, comes in this way and goes through that way. So if you mount it backwards, it ain't gonna work. So, and this thing is free. I can hear it moving in there a little bit, so I'm gonna test it electrically with my ohm meter in a minute or three, once I get done talking on this video, I guess. But I want to investigate some other things here. I told you earlier, I just kind of briefly mentioned about this throttle body, the way this is design, you're supposed to hear a click, and this is the TPS, right, throttle position switch right here, the bolts that hold it on, and you're supposed to, whenever you crack the throttle open, you're supposed to hear a click. This one is not clicking, and the purpose of the click is that's basically an internal switch there that tells the computer this is a LH 2.2 series fuel injection system, Bosch, and it just essentially tells the computer whether it's at idle or it's off idle onward. So with this thing not clicking, that could possibly be something to do with this idle being erratic. So I was looking through some literature and found the adjustment procedure for this. As it turns out, this has got kind of on the face of it, it's kind of complicated, but it's not really, I don't think. It's got just a kind of a bell crank assembly right here that when the throttle cable pulls this open, I've got that disconnected there, it's for access, don't mind that, but when this pulls this thing, it pulls up on this rod here, and then the rod pulls up on this is the throttle butterfly lever. So that's the way it kind of turns the orientation of the travel. So the cable's coming in this way and it has to turn that way, so that's what that is. Okay, that said, this throttle body, I don't know if you can see down in the back here, let me see if I can look through the viewfinder and find it, but there it is. You see that screw there, way down in there? That is called the throttle stop screw, and it's not an idle screw, it's a throttle stop screw. And that thing it needs to be adjusted, and the way that gets to be adjusted is you get access to your TPS and then you loosen it up. You got two little screws on it here. Looks like they might be Allen screws. Can't see in the back there. But you guys take a look and tell me what you see there. Is that an Allen screw? Yep, it is. So you're gonna get that thing loosened up. Just loosen it up, don't take it off, and then you're gonna back this bolt out right there. You're gonna back that thing out. It's got a lock nut on it there, I can see. If you peek back in the back right there, you see underneath, see that nut? Fit. So that thing, the bolt itself's got looks like a flathead slot on it. You can deal with that. And then what you're gonna do is you're going to loosen that all up and back this out. Back that thing all the way out so the throttle blade is closed completely. I mean, it's totally closed without being against that bolt right there. And then you're gonna run that bolt back in, that stop bolt, you're gonna run it back in until it just barely contacts this throttle lever here. Not enough to even start to open it, just barely contact it, and then you're gonna go a quarter turn more and lock it down, and that's your adjustment. And then you're gonna come over here and you're gonna rotate this throttle position switch. I think you rotate it counterclockwise, but it's gonna hear a click, and as soon as you hear the click, you're gonna lock it down, and that's your adjustment. So now I'm gonna make a more detailed video of that procedure there, but just looking at this thing, eyeballing it, if you look at that, you see how that looks like that bolt is rusted, and then it's like really clean down below on those threads. That makes me think that somebody has got in here and tried to adjust something in here, tried to adjust the idle with that, and that's not it. This thing under here is the idle speed adjusting screw, this deal right here. So so anyway, I'm going to work on that, and I'll report my findings on it. Now, you don't need to confuse yourself about working on this throttle blade, because you got to remember that the throttle blade is not, air does not pass that. What the purpose of this, that's the purpose of this IAC device here. That's what gets air around the throttle body and then into the intake to make it run at idle. So don't think, well, this throttle body's going to be cracked open a little bit, it's going to idle. That's not how it works. It's not a carburetor. So anyway, I'm going to tinker with this and do these adjustments, and or like I said, I'll report back to you. I think we're going to get some thunderstorms here in just a little bit. It's kind of clouding up over there, and I can see it on the radar. My phone's got radar on it. I'll tell you, make a little comment here. You have to dig deep to find information on how to actually do something on these cars. Now, that's not, I'm talking about Robert. Now, Robert makes a lot of videos. He's a big help, and he's done a tremendous service. But he does a lot of 850 stuff, so not all that applies to this car, but you have to dig deep for information on these. And what I mean by that is, you know, you get on these boards and you start looking at questions that people have asked, and you know, the people, I know they mean well, but they're just basically suggestion repeaters, you know. Somebody will say it's something, and it's just like they do it like with their eyes closed. They'll say, well, check this, check that, check this, check that, and they answer every question like that. You know, that's nice, but we know to check, usually in most cases, we know to check those things. We'd like to know how you check them. And you don't get that. You don't get somebody saying, well, you do this, and then you do that, and then you do this. It's just basically, just check the TPS, check the mass airflow sensor, check for vacuum leaks, check for fuel pressure, check. You know, just give the list every time. That's all they can contribute. So hopefully this will help somebody that's working on one of these that needs to do this, because it was really hard for me to find this information out. So I think actually I got lucky. And I'd like to point out one thing. It's a sad day here in the Who Said Tower compound, because I've just used up the last of this excellent can of gum out carburetor and choke cleaner that my neighbor over there gave me. And I can't tell you how old this thing must be, but this is old enough that this is before the EPA started the EPA started neutering the ingredients in this stuff. The stuff you buy now doesn't do nothing, because the EPA has made them take all the harsh ingredients out of it. But this stuff smells very, very similar to those big cans of the old carburetor cleaner you used to be able to get. You can still get them, but it doesn't have the same stuff in them anymore. But the ones that stunk really bad, it smells a lot like this. And you notice that stuff's not evaporating, it's just staying up there. So this is some good stuff, buddy. Can't get that anymore. Basically, the things you get now is like, well, would you like to have this can of stuff to just knock some of that dust off the outside of your throttle body? That's what it's good for. Just spray it on there and get that dust off there. Yeah, that's cleaning it. We clean it that way. Yeah, you've cleaned your throttle body. And one other little bit of story time here. Back when I used to work for I spent a year working for a large big box retailer that also does automotive services. I think you'll have to really think on that one to guess who that might be. Used to work for them for a year, and I worked in that automotive servicing area, both inside and outside. I started inside, and then I went outside and started doing tires and oil changes and stuff like that. And the first bit of information regarding that experience is I would never let any of those people work on anything I owned at all after seeing the people that worked there. Some of them were good, but some were not. Some were One guy came to work one morning, the fact that he was assistant manager, and then he came to work one morning and he had to spend half the day with his head turned to the side because his neck was stuck. He had a crick in his neck. He couldn't straighten his head out. But the main thing was, they used to do a thing there, and I think they may still do it, called a fuel injection service. And that was the biggest ripoff I've ever seen of anything to do with a car, probably. What the fuel injection service is you take a can or two of that very weak house brand throttle body cleaner, and you get the customer's car out there. If you could do it, most of them you couldn't do it because you know the air goes through a mass air meter and you couldn't do it anyway. But you could take you either got it. Some of them you could get them running, and you would spray the inside of the throttle body with that cleaner with the thing running, and that was cleaning the fuel injection system. Yeah. Now, anybody knows anything about fuel injection system knows that didn't do shit, because fuel travels through the fuel lines and the fuel injectors and into the engine. That's where you clean it. You would put the cleaner in the fuel injection system, not spraying the outside of it. That just takes a little bit of the grunge off of it. People pay for that stuff, and I felt bad about it, because I thought, well, that ain't doing nothing except draining their wallet. I used to like to do when people come in with those throttle body injected Chevys, like with a 305 or a 350 in them, and you could do those without, you just take the lid off the air cleaner and spray it, man. You have to keep it running, man. I love those things. You can sit there, it sound like a 4-barrel kicking in. Rev it up, whoop, whoop. I love that. I'd run a whole can through those things. But the rest of them, you take the boot off the throttle body, like I've got that one off up there. You just spray it in there, and that cleaned it, The stuff people falls for. I got a coworker. He's got an Altima, about a 06 or 5 or something like that, and he just had to have 2 wheel bearings put on, and brakes, front brakes I think, and an oil change, and his bill was $1,400 to do that. And let me tell you, anybody that works on cars knows that at least half of that went to profit, because you can get wheel bearings for way under $100 each for those cars. So that's $200 for wheel bearings at the most for parts, and then brake pads probably $60 at the most for real good ones. And the labor to install the parts, I don't know, but $1,400. And you know where he took it to? He took it to Christian Brothers Automotive in Nashville, which is recommended by Dave Ramsey. So I wonder if they sent some of that profit they made off that job to Dave Ramsey for his endorsement. But that's why I don't take my cars in to have them worked on, because people get, I'm not going to say the word, but people get RAPED on car repairs big time, because they don't know how to do them. If I got wheel bearings to put on, brakes, I just do it myself. I am not gonna make some person rich for doing something I can do myself. So I advise you guys, if you want to save money, learn how to work on your cars. See you in a little while. Okay then, we're gonna go through the steps to set the throttle stop on this 1988 Volvo 760 with a 2.3 B230FT red block engine. And this car's been having some idle problems, and so I've already had the IAC off to clean it, so I'm doing that now. And I thought I would investigate whether this TPS, throttle position switch, and the associated things with this are adjusted correctly. And I was detailing in the earlier video, I mentioned that these TPS switches on these things are supposed to click, because the click is an on-off switch to tell the computer whether it should idle through the AC or it's off idle. This one wasn't clicking, so I've done my first step on this, which is I had to get this, this is for the cruise. I had to take this off. It's got a bracket, it's got 2 bolts here. It's 10 millimeters, bolts under here, so you need to get that thing out of the way first. And then what you're going to do next, you have to loosen up this TPS, the bolts on it. You got a bolt here and a bolt down here. And what I used on that to do that is I used this guy here, which is this is a 3mm Allen wrench socket, I guess you could call it. So I did that and got this thing loosened up, and something I immediately noticed when I did that is I got my click. See if we can hear it while there's no resonance driving by. Hear that? Hear that clicking? That's what it's supposed to do. Now then, that doesn't mean we've adjusted everything. We've got some more steps to do. So what you're going to do next after that is you've got to, this is your, to open this up again, show you that, but right down in there, that's your throttle stop screw, and that sets the stop point for the throttle blade. That is not an idle speed screw whatsoever. Now, I've already told you what you're going to do on that, so what I did is I went ahead and I took a small socket and I loosened up the set screw, the lock nut right here, and then I'm going to back it down, try not to lose it, like that. And then I'm going to use a small flat blade and I'm going to back this set screw out, which means I'm going to turn it counterclockwise till it is off, meaning the throttle blade is not resting, throttle bracket's not resting on it. So I'm going to do that now, and then we're going to readjust it. Ooh. Alright. Okay, let's rejoin the action in progress here. So, and I touch it and it falls. Lovely. Anyway, I had my screwdriver on there. Bear with me while I get that put back on. Here. I'll show you, oops, see what I'm doing. Come on, you bastard, quit fighting me. There we go. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to do a simple thing is put a screwdriver into a slot. But here's what I'm doing. I've got my lock nut loosened up, I told you about, and I've been backing this thing out. I backed it out far enough that I saw it was loose and not touching that arm right there. And what I've done is I've started running it in clockwise, and I've got my hand on this, not now as I'm holding the camera with it, but normally I had my other hand on this little throttle lever arm, and I'm feeling of when it's starting to contact this, and you'll feel it start to lift it up. So you need to back it in and run it out several times to get a feel for that, because you want to just run it in clockwise until it just barely contacts it, not opening it, and then you're going to turn your screwdriver clockwise a quarter turn. That means half of half. So do that, and then you're going to lock this your little lock nut back down, and you're done with this part of it. Okay, I made my adjustment, so now I'm just taking my small socket and ratchet and 1/4-inch ratchet, and I'm just going to lock this lock nut down. Take care not to turn the screw itself. There it is. Now we've got to adjust the TPS itself. Okay, the last step is to adjust the TPS, and this is not a real detailed adjustment on these. Essentially what you're going to do is, once you have this job over here done, you're going to come over and you're going to rotate this body of this thing counterclockwise until when you open the throttle up, you just barely open the throttle up, you should hear it click. Hear it do that? The overall view here. So that should be it, and you lock it down and you're good to go. So okay then, I'm gonna put everything back together. I'm gonna put the cruise module back on over there and hook all the vacuum lines back up and put my AC back in. I think our brief thunderstorms are getting closer and closer, so this is probably going to be a good place for me to temporarily shut it down and go have some lunch. I think I'm going to do that because I'm getting hungry. But interesting to see how this operates with this all adjusted correctly, because it wasn't clicking before. So what that meant that the computer assumed that the engine was not at idle, even if it was. So I noticed that when this was running, idling, that it idled somewhat ragged. It just didn't idle very smooth. It kind of had just almost a lope to it, but not quite. And I smelled a lot of catalytic converter smell coming out of the back of it. So mixture was off a little bit too. So just one of those kind of picky things you got to do, I guess, on these. But it has to be done, you know. Some of this stuff, when you're used to working on newer cars, the OBD2 and all that, it's archaic the way that you adjust things. But anyway, that's the overview of this. If you got any questions, please ask them. I'll share what I know about it. And one other little mention, I think this car is going to have a catch can put on it because I think it's got blow by. I'm hoping that the more I drive it, the more it's going to kind of work back in, because it was, the rear main seal was leaking, and that's quit now, seems to be, since I've been driving it some. So we'll pick away at it, see what we do. Okay, thanks for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. And also check Robert's channel out, Robert DIY, if you got a newer Volvo, like a 850 or a V70, S70, things like that. Check his channel out. He's got a lot of info on there. See you guys.